Okay. All right. I think I got it. I think we got it. I think we got it. I just need to there we go. There we go. There we go. It worked. I finally took the time to take 2 minutes or less to uh you know, basically just put that image in paint and widen it and increase the height and yeah, just put some words on it so that way I can have a little title slide. So that's cool. That's great. There's gonna be a almost 10-minute period at the beginning where it's just blank. It's just me getting ready because I need to put together some like starting music so that way, can I add an audio source on here? Hold on. Audio. Uh, let's see. I'll find it. Oh, media file. Here we go. MP4, TS, MOV, FLIV, AVI, MP3. There we go. Yeah, we can. I could just put together. I could just put together a background track, and then have that play during the opening bit, and then we just kind of go from there. This way I can do background stuff, and I won't delay so much. So perfect, fun, quite excellent. I have made one small step to being you know, at least having the appearance of a professional streamer. You know, uh, so that's good. So that's working. I'm not gonna mess with that until we, do game, if we do game, because Duet Night Abyss is out. I've been waiting. I've been waiting. I've been waiting. I'm gonna stream that game. I'm gonna stream Duet Night Abyss. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic. I'm gonna enjoy that greatly. And then you know, I'm going to try and stream more here at the end of the year, and then uh just kind of figure out good streaming days for next year, so that way we can just kind of keep up the momentum of things. You know, if the stream title wasn't a hint, this is going to be a VTC ramble. This is gonna be a VTC smoke and ramble. So which leads me into a related point. I realize I kind of skipped the segue. The segue being, I really should record the dev streams again. Even when I'm just sitting here doing magic, I'm pretty sure I can ramble and type shit at the same time. Spell magic lore and stuff, and to just ramble off flavor for magic. Like, did you know? Did you know that according to Pathfinder's rules, the way that the spell Fireball is written is you point at somebody and a little bead comes out of your finger and rushes at them and explodes, and that is Fireball. Uh, but in VTC, what happens is you do the verbal component, you do the somatic component, which then ends with you extending your dominant hand, similar to this, and then the fireball just, fills your hand, and then you throw it in the in the general direction of the enemy that you were casting it at, and it will fly at them after you let go of it from your hand. In Pathfinder, you just point at somebody, and then the thingy comes out of your finger. In VTC, you are throwing it at them, which is great. Just great. You know, I was kind of flabbergasted when I reread Fireball. I wonder if D&D does that. Hold on. I know I've got, I know I've got a PDF of the core rulebook somewhere. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do a quick look. Oh my God. It's been a while since I have looked in here. What do we... What do we... Okay, yeah, we should probably not look at this anymore. Hello, mother. Alright, we're D&D. D&D. Let's see, that's the monster manual. Is this... That's the Dungeon Master's Guide. It, is the player's handbook what I'm looking for? I'm pretty sure it is. Okay, pretty blah, 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 blah. We gotta find the spells, the magic. Page 200. Alright, the magic. We gotta find uh we have to find Fireball. Which it's a wizard spell. It is third tier. Oh wow, I nailed that one. It's also a sorcerer spell, which I guess makes sense. Alright, let's see. Come on. This is in alphabetical order, so I don't have to scroll too far down, considering F is not a letter that is too far down. And we're going to find out what D&D says about Fireball. Do you actually throw it? Let's see. Fire bolt, fire shield, fire storm, fireball. Fireball. Here we go. All right. Okay. A bright streak flashes from your pointing finger to a point you choose within range, and then blossoms with a low roar into an explosion of flame. Each creature in a 20-foot sphere centered around that point must make a dexterity saving throw. What? So D&D, you point at somebody and then it just, and then, whatever. Pathfinder, you point and then, a marble comes out of your finger and basically does the same thing. VTC, fill your hand with fire and then throw it at people. What the fuck? We really are just like weirdos. Really, we are. We really are just weirdos. Me and Aiden. We're just strange men who, just. That is so lame. I mean, yeah, it's got some nice verbiage to it, but that is so not cool. I want to throw fireballs at people, not, point at them and then some shit happens. Oh my god. I realize I should probably put the actual smoke on screen. That does not look as bad as the preview box. Thanks, Mom. That image does not look as bad as the preview box made me think it was going to look when I had the starting soon screen up. So, okay. Okay, that's good. That's good that that's there. I mean, it's good that that looks decent. Um, you know. But yeah, I got a new haul of smokes now that the diesels are depleted. Well, they're nearly depleted. Got a new haul of smokes. So we're having the Undercrown Shade today, and I didn't remember until just before stream, but I bought one of these in Churchill size for Dave for his birthday. I also got one for myself, so because he's not the type to desire to smoke alone. Yeah, I got, I smoked Undercrown Shade with Dave for his birthday. And I think I got Undercrown 10th anniversary in subscription one time, and then I found it at a cigar lounge in Greenwood and smoked that there. And I think I picked a couple of these up then, so that way I could, celebrate Dave's birthday with him a couple of days late because we both had to work. That's what happens when you're an adult, and that's why I don't even bother celebrating my birthday, but people still bother me about it. you know, People still bug me on that day, even though I'm at work. You know, at least most people don't, which is fantastic. Because I don't want to put up with it. All right, I say that. But I also complain, oh, nobody talks to me. But then I also complain, oh, when people talk to me, it's they're bothering me or they want something. I need to pick a fucking side. I need to pick a fucking side. And I was like, do I want people to call and text me, just in general, or do I not? Honestly, I know which side I'm leaning towards. But, you know. Anyway. So, I should note that today we have, you're not going to be able to see it that easily, but today we have code red. The reason why is because one of the boys at work today went to the gas station to get beverages for himself and the others. He got Diet Mountain Dew for one of them and was unsure as to whether or not which beverage it was. So I, being the guy who knows about that kind of thing, was asked to do the tasting. So I popped the lid off of one and took a sip. And yeah, the aspartame flavor kind of hit the back of my tongue as soon as I decided, like, oh, this is fine. Yeah, no, it hit, and then I basically just like sucked all the flavor out of my mouth and spat it out as soon as possible. I nearly vomited because it was diet. As a result, my life force has been damaged and is now unstable. I can tell because I feel just lethargic and generally unwell. So we have code red today to mend my damaged life force. If that guy had done that intentionally, I would have fired him, for attempting to assassinate the supreme overlord of the store. However, that was not his intent, so I'll let it slide this once. Also, since we brought that up, and also I brought up Dave in regards to the cigar, Dave tried to give me diet one time, and I spat Mountain Dew on the floor and yelled at him and almost fired him right there. Because if you're gonna try and poison me, then at least do a good job of it. At least try to hide it. But Dave was just being a clumsy little boy. Oh yeah, Mom, while you're in the chat, I received a phone call from a pharmacy again. You know, they actually somehow got through my spam filter. So I told them that I am not you. So hopefully they don't call me anymore. Ugh. First Walmart and now just random pharmacies. Don't answer if they call, though. It's probably a scam. But good God. Also, it seems that scammers have gotten just a little bit smarter. When I answer the phone to a number that I don't know, I always answer saying, "Who are you and how did you get this number?" Pick up the phone, wait just a few seconds, and then say that. And then usually, if it's a bot, it'll go through its automated message, and then you can just hit the key that it says to have that one particular bot not call you anymore. However, with a person, usually they just hang up immediately, which is great because I hate, if I want to like get scammed by, some, well, apparently like I said, I think it was a scam, Mom. Like I said, I think it was a scam, and they were looking for you. And when I said I am not you, they went, "Oh, we'll add your number to our do not call list then." And then he hung up on me. It was some Indian motherfucker. It's always an Indian motherfucker. I told John, which, saying that brings me to a point. I told John that if I ever had access to the entirety of the world's nuclear arsenal, I would destroy the moon. You know, if I have any, of the arsenal left, I will destroy India. I will, and I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure if enough world governments, get a hold of this clip, they might let me. They might let me just so I can be the fall guy. Yeah, this deranged psychopath, blew up the moon and India. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. You know, I'm tired of getting scam calls. It's so annoying. It's so annoying because scammers are just like, oh, you can do this like AI job. It's not like, hey, here's free nudes from some 22-year-old's OnlyFans. It drives me up the fucking wall. Ugh. But, now that I've started answering in a more deranged fashion towards, the actual scammers and the scam bots, they've started to leave me alone. So, I'm here thinking, why didn't I think of that in the first place? We may never know. Anyway, let's get this little, let's get going, and then we can talk about why YoD haunts absolutely everything that I do with VTC, and maybe everything that the other boys are also doing. I really need to ask Aiden about that. I'll add it to my to-do list. Game night's Thursday, assuming I don't get sucked into work. Fucking, I coordinate my fingers correctly. Oh, fuck, come on. There we go. I was about to say, am I fucking retarded? Can I not get this? Okay, here we go. Hmm. Oh. Okay. Just my leg posture. Hmm. Hmm. Something a little bit, you know, something a little bit lighter to, just. It's been a couple days without that horrendous 9.99 coupon at my job. And so the last few days have been breezy, and it's been really good. You know, and it's made, and for the closer that I'm training, it's also been really good for him because, without that coupon, people are not so eager to order. You know, and ironically enough, our sales so far this week have increased. Our food waste has also decreased by like 30%. I wonder why. The sales increase though is only about 2%, and that's only for the past 2 days. But the food waste going down by 30% over the course of 2 days. Oh yes, that's good. But that's just the business side of things. As for morale has increased. Morale has risen because, we're not having to make the dumbest pizzas known to man constantly. So, you know, and for the drivers, morale has increased because, well, specifically the closing drivers, uh, because they don't have to do as many dishes because we're not going through as much food. And, the drain hole is still clogged. It's been, a month or more that I have been fucking that hole, and it still isn't fixed. The higher ups are never going to fix it. I need to figure out how to fix it. it comes down to it, if it comes down to it, I will just pay for a local plumber myself just to ensure that it gets done because I'm fairly certain that I could that I could call a local plumber, in the morning. I could, tomorrow morning at, I don't know, 11 a.m., I could call a local plumber, hypothetically, and say, hey, I work for Domino's, and we need to, our drain hole for our dish sink is draining excessively slowly to the point to where, it just stops sometimes. And they'd probably say something to the variety of, okay, yeah, we can be out there this afternoon. The afternoon that I call. Shocking, shocking. As opposed to waiting for, my supervisor and, the owner's wife to, you know, stop fucking around and actually get it done. But I'm not the general manager. I'll let the general manager handle it because that's his job. It's not my job. My job is to assist him with running the store, not to run the store in his place. You know. So, I am heeding his plan for this. So, we just do that. I realize I have gotten massively off topic. It's mostly just me complaining about work, but hey, that's how you know I'm an adult. Now, for reference, just, this is going to be the last thing before I hard pivot into today's topic. I do not hate my job. I really don't, which, might come as a surprise to some people. You know, I still remember what it was like to work at Taco Bell. And, while it took me about 5 years to start hating Taco Bell, uh, I didn't at first. And everything at pizza is just so much easier. Everything. And since I've moved to a different town, yeah, I have to deal with the elderly more. But it just seems that overall, whenever I have to, deal with customers, they're less stupid. So, you know, I count, I, I count the blessings and I weigh them against my curses. And so far, the blessings carry greater weight, you know, aside from the other benefits of moving to a new town, those being, you know, people don't have subwoofers and people don't have $3,000 sound systems in their $1,000 shitbox, and have the worst taste in music on the planet, and everyone must know. And uh, the and any road work that takes place in this town gets done quickly. You know, if it's major road work, it gets done in about a week. If it's something minor, it gets most of the time it gets done within the day, which is excellent. It's not like Greensburg where major road work takes years. Seriously, there was one corner in Greensburg, where two main roads intersected with each other. A corner that you know was closed down and was being worked on essentially the entire time I was in undergrad. Which I'm pretty sure it was about 3.5 years that they were working on that, working in quotes, of course. Here, there was a pretty major road that they were repaving. It took, I think, 4 days for them to do that. It was amazing. And then they did more repaving all over town, and it took, each section that I noticed took about a day to be repaved and done. It's amazing. And I think I've said that before. It's amazing. Yes, I have to deal with the elderly, but, you know, most of the time it's just saying that, I do not control the app and, certain deals are online only. but here and but we have a certain certain other stuff in store. You know, just basic questions. I just have to repeat myself a lot, which I generally don't enjoy, but I would rather repeat myself than having to deal with some of the most mind-bending stupidity on the planet. So, again, I count my blessings and I weigh them against my curses, and so far, the blessings have greater weight. Not to mention the higher ups are better than at Taco Bell. You know, they're not as frustratingly inept. Well, except for the one, but he's quieted down for the most part, so, there's that. Anyway, so now we're gonna hard pivot to the topic of discussion, which, this stream has a VTC title, which means that this is a VTC ramble stream. And now that we've done 20 minutes of rambling with 10 minutes of the starting screen, the new starting screen, ooh, I need to get an end screen, which is basically just going to be the same image again, but it says, it'll say "see you later" or something. I could probably just do a paint of that real fast. Um, anyway, so for those of you who don't know, because I don't remember talking about it, YoD stands for Year of Disaster, which is a half Pathfinder, half VTC campaign that I ran in undergrad. Which for reference was, I was in undergrad from 2016 to 2020. It lasted until I think 2021 or 2022. I don't remember anymore. It was a long one. It was a long one. 7 gigantic acts of, story and side quests and character interactions and this and that. It was also the most unbalanced. It was also one of the most unbalanced messes that I've ever ran as a campaign. The damn thing was held together with staples and prayers. It was you know um but it worked out. It was mostly a story campaign, really, especially at the end. It was just set pieces where it's just like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna I'll be as honest as I can with the numbers, but it was the most unbalanced mess I've ever run. It is the reason why we have VTC now. Like before, it was just like a Pathfinder expansion project, like a gigantic Pathfinder expansion project, where I had the genius idea of let's just uncap everything. Fuck it. That was a bad idea. That was a horrible idea. And then about halfway through the campaign, I realized, yeah, this is a bad idea. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. And then, I started implementing limitations to various degrees of success. You know, and now it's VTC. Now it's its own thing. Like Kalis has its own. Like I have my own world now, and it's got a growing lore, and you know, a growing list of associated mechanics and rules that are variably well balanced and require testing. But that's how these things go. But anyway, YOD. So yeah, the Year of Disaster was, it was a grand campaign. The players were level 170 by the end, ish, 170 ish, and oh god, it was unbalanced as hell. It was, yeah. So but every campaign that I've run since then has just been, that YOD has just been haunting it. Because the campaign is over. It's dead and buried, but the spirit of it is just there all the time. The references to it, contribute to that, but there's no problem. I don't think there's a problem with saying, oh yeah, this reminds me of that time when such and such happened. there's no problems with that. But just every time a mechanic needs to be implemented or rebalanced, I can just sense, I can just sense that campaign just sitting in the room with me. It's like, fuck, you know. And I think the reason why we've been doing so much foundational work recently for the system is because we're basically just pouring, concrete foundation. Again, this is all metaphorical, but we're pouring concrete foundation over the skeleton of that campaign to bury it, Whereas this is the plot of Monster House, which when VTC is done, it will definitely be a monster house. It'll have a monster bathroom on the first floor where I take my monster pisses. I think that's the first time I've said that backwards. That sounds weird when I say it backwards. But that being said, it was unbalanced as shit. Like everything was broken in some way. And when I say broken, I'm using two different definitions for that word. The first definition is the obvious one, where things didn't work correctly because of how I had Frankensteined the system, and it was not the greatest. All right, I did not properly understand balancing. But then again, when you have characters who are above level 100 and you start balancing from there, things stop working. Also, Pathfinder's system really starts to break down after level 20. And so, that, like I said, the system was held together with staples and my prayers. And man, I understand the Imperium. I really do. I really understood. It made me understand the Imperium of man. Uh, but that being said, the broken mess that it was. I mean, even the story was a little was a little fucked up in some places. But that I attribute that to just like keeping it stuck in my head instead of writing any of it down. Uh, at least after the first portion when I had where I had the thematic anchor. After that, everything just went to hell. But the boys had fun. At least Aiden and Wezzy did. Aiden does bring up how it was a good time frequently. I think it was. I think the story played a role in the boys' enjoyment, but I also think that just they were good role players, which was nice. Which definitely helped with definitely helped with the enjoyment factor. Not to mention that the various NPCs that I played had charm in different ways. And yeah. I mean, evil characters were you know like conniving, evil schemers. But sometimes you must join hands with an evil conniving schemer to deal with a larger threat. And other times they would you know act against those forces. And then the good guys, I guess, as it were, they developed developed different bonds with. They loved Azazel. They loved Azazel, and I even incorporated a mechanic into that where I killed one of them, and then Azazel, being, pretty buddy buddy with the entire party, I killed one of them, and he just gave up. He was just like, I can't do this anymore, basically. And then, the power of friendship kicked in, and they actually won the fight quite quickly. Not, I mean, they would have won quickly because he gave up, but also just, that was expedited because for some reason, whenever I would kill one of them in a combat encounter, the random number generator that we used to roll dice would just increase the values that they would receive, and so they would be rendered more effective by losing a member of the party, which naturally would make naturally you'd think, oh, that would make them less effective. It didn't. They became the remaining members became more effective. It was bizarre. I don't I like I said, it was the power of friendship, which has not been replicated since. Probably because the three boys who replaced the two that, uh, we kind of keep extraordinarily loose contact with are much lesser in many ways. First off, they're all not as good at roleplay, and it really shows. And then various, let's say, personality deficits are more on the forefront, which kind of drags things down. Leads to a lot of frustrations, not just on my part. That being said, it's not like, it's not like we can't, it's not like we're not, it's not like, it's not like the new boys are preventing fun from being had. It's just, it's definitely not to the same level, certainly. Um, but I think that will change with the upcoming campaign that's coming next year. Uh, so we'll see. I think one of the reasons why was the last campaign that I ran wasn't as well thought out as YoD, and whatever. But Sin Reborn has had tremendous thought put into it, at least compared to you know fucking Gnosis. So Sin Reborn I think is going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be and I have specified that look, you are going to need backstories and there is going to be role play. So you need to do that. You need to do backstory and you need to do role play. And I've specified that I've defined what a sufficient level of backstory is to them, and hopefully they get it figured out. Because if not, well, I've never had to kick somebody from a campaign before, but, there's a first time for everything. It eventually happens, I guess. But, I don't anticipate that'll happen. I might have to be a little bit more firm about it, but I think that'll kind of, you know, whip any boys who think they can skirt past without, you know, doing what is required to, kind of get in line and do what is required. You know, even the worst among them will get it done. It might not be great, but as long as it meets the minimum requirements, I won't be bothered over much. And hopefully, with the new foundation that Aiden and I have been working on, which obviously it's not finished. Obviously, it's not finished, but with some new foundational elements, once we get some really good testing data for it, I think that we will be able to bury YOD. I mean, obviously, we're still going to have, Aiden, Wesley, and I are still going to have fond memories of it, and reference it here and there. But I think we'll be able to incorporate a lot more references to Sin with the new boys since they're actually playing in it, and remember that one fondly as well. We'll see. We'll see what comes of it, but that's at least. I'm pretty sure at least two. Not two. I'm pretty sure it's at least 4 months off. So I have 4 months to get what I need done, and they've got 4 months approximately. I mean, we're gonna start. We're not gonna starting it in January like I originally anticipated. Like I initially said, because the Quesanold is much more of a slow burner when it comes to storytelling. Um, he's a prep DM, and I'm an improv DM, and that difference for the boys is quite palpable. Um, and both styles have their positives and negatives. Uh, you know, since I'm an improv DM, all the lizards here. What up, lizard? But both styles have their positives and negatives. Since I'm more improvisational, I can adapt to what my players do better. However, things kind of, as a result of that, some of the loose nuts and bolts kind of fly off where they can. Meanwhile, for Wezzy, since he is a prep DM, derailing is something that is more easy to uh, occur with him, and so you know, I can benefit from being a little bit more, strict in structuring for actually doing prep instead of strictly improv, and Wezzy can do with a little bit more flexibility. He needs to anticipate. Oh yeah, there are other people who kind of make the story. I build the road, but I don't necessarily drive on it. You know, while I'm more like, yeah, okay, I kind of just run with whatever they're doing, kind of build the road alongside them, just a little bit ahead. You know, as I know, kind of guiding them toward, in the direction of, milestones and destinations. This metaphor is breaking down, but yeah, we'll see if YoD, continues to haunt us. So, Lizard, I see you're out there. How's the days off been? I said earlier that without that coupon, things have been fantastic at work. Not having to deal with the dumbest pizzas known to man constantly has been phenomenal. But, you've been off. You've been, these first couple days without the coupon, you haven't had to deal with any of that. So, what's been going on? Oh, yeah, this is really smooth. Talking about the cigar now, as this is, firstly, a true estate cigar, it is quite good. But also, because it is, a lighter wrap, it is smooth. It's quite smooth. I do enjoy it. And this is something I said to, I think, one of the boys at Pizza. I don't just enjoy, full strength cigars all the time. Sometimes I'll, have something lighter, something with some more smoothness. And it's quite nice. Strength has its place, to take the edge off of a hard day, or that's just something that I crave. But kind of just slowly unwinding with something lighter is also quite nice. So, but as for flavor, let me take it. When I lit this up, it just had a nice, woody flavor, not over much spice as is normal. But right now, no, we're well past that. Yeah. No, no coupon. No coupon has been phenomenal. It's been fantastic. All right. I have had, you know, I have had a wonderful time at work without that damned coupon. And I've only had to tell one person so far that no, we don't have the coupon anymore. No, you cannot have a pizza with a bunch of toppings for 9.99. It's been it has been excellent. It has been phenomenal. You know, it's been easier on me because I haven't, like I said several times now, I haven't had to make the dumbest pizzas known to man. But it's also been easier on our closers because simpler things. I think this is pretty much a universal statement, but having to make something simple is much less time consuming uh, than having to make something stupid. You know, specialty pizzas. The number of specialty pizzas that I've been making has increased, but that just means I look at the screen once, go, oh, that's a specialty pizza, and then, just get it done real fast. Pretty much. And Hawaiians, a lot of Hawaiians, a lot of Hawaiians. Uh, Actually, more Hawaiians than extravaganzas. Um, but like I said, I look at the screen, go, oh, look, a Hawaiian. And then I know what goes on that, so I can just, pound that out real quick. I don't look at it, go, okay, I need this, 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 and this, and then I put those on there, and then I go, oh, I also need this, this, and this. And then have to look at the screen a million times to figure out, like, what am I making? What am I doing? So it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's so much simpler. It's so much simpler. I mean, yeah, it's specialties and people are dumping a shit ton of money on us. They're getting scammed, but it's so much better. It's so excellent. It's so good. I did post in the Martin chat that we do have a boost week at the end of next month, so that's gonna be great. At least it's not the coupon, and at least it's 10 days. It's 10 days of stupid bullshit, but it's not 2 months of just the dumbest shit I've ever seen. So, cheers, huh? Ah, what kind of boost week? 50% off menu, 50% off menu price pizzas for online orders only. I think I put that in the Martin chat. I might not have. I might have forgotten to do that. But yeah, 50% off all pizzas online only. Uh, yeah. So not terrible. We're probably going to get a number of just stupid things, but I think what's more likely to happen is just we're gonna get a whole bunch of specialties, which again, just look at the screen, see, oh, that's a specialty, and then we just know and can just pound it out real fast, even the more annoying ones, as opposed to, random shit. And then right after the boost week is over, just a couple days, that's when the menu changes happen. I mean, let me think, because I'm pretty sure, at normal price, a seven topping pizza that's, stupid comes out to like $30. So 50% off of that is $15. So we're still going to be making money, as opposed to where it feels like we're the ones getting scammed. So, I'm pretty sure things will still be less stupid than with the 9.99 coupon. So we'll be fine. We'll be good. We won't have to put up with as much dumb crap. And it's online only, so we can't do it in store. You know, I love saying that. I love saying that because being in a town with a bunch of old people, that kind of helps gatekeep some of the just the most asinine shit. Ugh. Because the elderly go one of two ways. They either want like something simple, or they want just the most overloaded, expensive crap known to man. And ugh. But and whatever. It'll still be easier than the 9.99 coupon. So I don't mind. I don't mind. You know. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure a lot of us in the store have said, I'd rather deal with, like, several consecutive boost weeks than the 9.99 coupon. I still stand by that. I still stand by that. If that coupon were to never come back, but then, 4 times a year, corporate was like, yeah, you guys are going to have a boost month. And it was, something like, oh, we're going to alternate between online and carry out boost months. 4 times a year, I'd take that. If they said, oh, we just like, you could do the 9.99 coupon again, or you could do up for however long we want, however long we arbitrarily decide, or you can do a boost month. I'd take a boost month. Yeah, I'd take that because at least it's simple. You know, I don't have to fucking build the stupidest things known to man constantly. It'll just be it'll be pretty smooth sailing by comparison. I think we will really see the effect that not having the coupon has on our business uh this weekend. The first weekend without that coupon, I think we'll just I mean, it's going to be busy, obviously, it always is, but I think it'll be noticeably easier, you know. We're still going to have relatively similar sales, but it's going to be over we're just going to make less shit and less stupid shit. So, it'll be good. It'll be nice. It'll be fantastic, you know. Oh, it'll be lovely. It'll be good. It'll be fine, you know. I mean, hell, because we've had the 9.99 coupon for so long, uh, you know, running a weekend without it, we're I don't think we're really gonna break a sweat. I really don't think we will. It'll be excellent. It'll be fantastic. Um, it will be most enjoyable. I mean, to a certain point, obviously. So, hey, that'll be good. That'll be great. You know. Uh, I didn't decide what game we were gonna do today. Um, I don't know. I might put Azur Lane up and just let it go because whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I might just log in to do it Night Abyss again. Old people get money on Fridays and Mondays. Yes, they do. Although I sense with the whole like EBT thing that's going to be happening in November, I think we will see somewhat maybe of a downturn in business, if only slightly. But it just means that I don't have to put up with as many crackheads, you know. So that'll be good because crackheads just always, without fail, order the stupidest shit. It's like, no, you cannot. It's like, oh yeah, no, you can't sell your food stamps for, for cash to then waste it on an $8 sandwich at a pizza place. Go to Subway. Go to Subway. You can spend just a little bit more and get more than double what you get at Domino's for $8. But it actually brings me to a point that I brought up to John, I think. I brought it up to John, but I think I brought it up to somebody else. I brought it up to Aiden, actually. I think Aiden? I think I told Aiden? I don't remember, but I definitely told John. That point being, I will never, ever believe an economist when they say, oh, the economy's really bad right now. It's like, okay, yeah, okay. I observe. I observe that things are more expensive. I agree with the economist on that, but I will not agree that things are on a massive downswing while kind of fast food and pizza places are still thriving. That people still have the money to waste the way they do. All right, and another point is that with that is I will never believe an economist. While the restaurant industry still, is holding steady, and while people, fuel is not expensive enough because people in their gigantic, loud trucks are still just idling for, tens of minutes bordering on hours. You know, the economy is not as bad as we are told, and it is observable in the fact that people continue to just waste money. And this is where the the angrier portion, of me kind of comes out, about that. And it's like, no, no. The economy is okay because not enough people are experiencing spirit grinding poverty, because they can still afford to waste money the way that they do. So no, things are not as bad as we are told. All right, and when they are, I mean, yeah, we'll definitely, everybody's definitely gonna notice and everybody's gonna feel it. But until that day comes, no, it's not as bad as we're being told. And honestly, I kind of want that to happen. I kind of want people to kind of, be kind of snap to attention to where it's like, no, you cannot waste, you know, for the Taco Bell people, for the people who go to Taco Bell every day. No, you cannot waste $900 at a fast food establishment every month. All right, I kind of want us to get to that point, but I know that's just me being like, I know that's just me briefly just being angry, you know. But because I still have my Taco Bell anger. It's still a part of me. I guess that's what happens when you work at a place for 7 years and just see the exact same people every day dumping rent on wasting so much money on on that kind of stuff. You know, yeah, I imagine if I ever talked to like became friends with somebody who was like that, they would think that I am just really bizarre because I don't waste that much money on stuff like that. Yeah, it helps that I work at the place, and so I can get it at a massively discounted price, and yes, I understand that has certain advantages, but still, it's like I don't waste money on that shit. You know, I go to I go to I go to Wendy's like once a month at most, and usually it's for something simple like 20 nuggets and some fries, you know, Dr. Pepper cherry. But that's once a month again at most because I'm not gonna you know I don't want to spend money like that. I have bills to pay, you know. You know, you know. I know sitting here smoking a cigar, it is somewhat hypocritical to say that I do live with a certain degree of austerity, but I mean, this is my vice. This is my one vice, and I try to maintain a stash for quite a lot, quite as long a period as I can, and then you know, I am not I'm not buying top shelf stuff all the time. I rarely do actually. I think the only time I ever get a top shelf cigar is when subscription sends it to me, and then that comes out to about I think $4 or $5 for a $20 stick. It's a steal. That's a steal. But that's what I don't choose what goes into the subscription. That's CI that chooses that. All right, they're choosing to do that, and man, some of those top shelf sticks, amazing. I have to pee, so I will be right back. Okay, alright, I gotta make sure to turn off the correct thing instead of turning on something that's wrong. I almost turned on the starting screen again. I gotta get used to how I've reconfigured my sources here, so that way I don't accidentally switch to the wrong screen. Then again, actually, hold on, can I do another scene? Let's fiddle here. Oh, yep, okay, we've messed that up. And then I jump back here. Okay, so that's fine. That's all there. Okay. So I guess I could just switch it over. Just switch over to a new scene. Kind of, yes, just remove the new scene. Okay, that's the audio only scene, right? Okay. Right. Perfect. We're good. All right. I just need to fiddle a little bit more with uh Streamlabs, Get a get improve the stream program setup, as it were. And that way I don't have to like turn stuff off and on. I can just you know you know get some, maybe get some stock effects for transitions. I'll figure out how to do that, maybe. We'll see. uh but yeah, we're it's been an all right week so far. I took a nap today, which, I mean, hey, it was about 100 minutes, but it was good. I needed that. I kind of just kind of just lay, kind of, I didn't even lay on my pillow. I just kind of laid right below it and just threw the blanket over me so I could nap for 90 minutes, for 100 minutes. It was great. It was fantastic. I think that sip of Diet Mountain Dew really did damage my life force more than I thought it would. You know, and so I slept it off, for lack of a better term. And then, waking up to double check things at the store. I had to shake off the waking up lethargy. I don't want to wake up. Basically just shake that feeling off. You know, someone who's never smoked a cigar. Well, all right. So a nice beginner cigar. So, hmm. Okay. So you're gonna want to go. So someone who's never smoked a cigar. All right. I'm gonna have two different recommendations here. All right. One recommendation is for somebody who has smoked, maybe cigarettes, and then somebody who's just never smoked who wants to get into it, right? So we'll do the recommendation for someone uh who's never smoked at all, right? Obviously, you're gonna want to go kind of on the smaller side. Uh, something that's, I don't know, maybe like 5 inches in length. The ring gauge doesn't particularly matter, but if smaller is better, because if you're gonna smoke the whole thing at once, that's a lot of nicotine. Um, but something simple, maybe something infused, something a little bit on the sweeter side, just to kind of help your palate. For someone who's never smoked before, I would recommend anything from the acid line from Drew Estate. That's gonna be good starter stuff. Because the wrap and the fillers are going to have some added sweetness to them that'll help. It basically takes the edge all the way off. But if you're somebody who is maybe thinking, oh, I don't want to smoke cigarettes anymore, I think I'll just go down to like smoking once a month. um again, I'm going to recommend Drew Estate. Number one, because they're kind of mid shelf in terms of cost, but also their products are excellent. And acid is made by Drew Estate, so you can just transition from that to their uninfused line. So, I guess for somebody who has smoked cigarettes or anything else, who wants to get into cigars, Undercrown is good. You can find those in tobacco shops that have cigars. Those shops also pretty commonly stock Alec Bradley's. So really anything by Alec Bradley that you could find in a regular cigar shop, those are also good. They tend to be a little bit on the smaller side as well, so that also kind of helps with getting used to not just the nicotine amount that you're going to be smoking and have come into your system, uh, but you're also kind of going to be kind of figuring out the time investment for smoking, because I mean obviously smoking a cigar does take longer than smoking a cigarette by quite a bit. I do these streams, pretty much almost, once a week, every week, and usually, the first 30 minutes is me just like rambling and not remembering to light this thing, and then the other, hour and a half or more is me actually like rambling and smoking. And even though I'm a little bit of a slower smoker most of the time, I'd say that, the time investment to actually smoke a cigar, if you're going to smoke the whole thing, obviously you can smoke halfway down and then, kind of save the other half for later. But if you're going to sit down and smoke the whole thing, yeah, it's going to take an hour plus. So obviously, if you've got that kind of time, then yeah, go ahead, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you want to, if you want to try it, if you want to try and get into it, yeah, you're going to need to set aside at least an hour. And then, grab something from, a local place. Again, something on the smaller side, just so, if you're trying it, you can, it's not going to be over much of an investment in terms of time and in terms of money. Um, the a trick that I found out about when it comes to buying cigars from places that stock them is when you're looking at the shelves that have cigars on them, right? What you're gonna want to buy, is so I'm standing, which is pretend that I'm standing and I'm looking at what they have, right? What you're going to want to buy is anything from like your nose to about right here. So, not something that you're going to look straight ahead at, but something you're going to look like slightly down to and about down to like, kind of like the bottom of your ribs. That's the stuff that they put right there because that's the stuff that moves. That's where you're going to want to kind of buy from because that's the common stuff. It's typically going to be much more reasonably priced, and you know there's going to be different selections at different places, and regardless of that, they're going to have various things of they're going to have different sticks of different sizes, different strengths. uh One thing I forgot to mention when I was making my recommendations is when you're looking for a cigar to try as your first one, right? And you can't really see it because the lighting in here is terrible. But when you're looking, you're going to see cigars that have really really dark, kind of wraps, kind of the outside. This is the wrap. You're going to see cigars that have a really dark wrap, and then you're going to see cigars that have kind of yellowy golden wraps, and then you're going to see colors in between those two, right? If you're getting into it, regardless of whether or not you've smoked or not, regardless, you're going to want to go for something with a lighter wrap, closer to that golden brown. All right, because generally speaking, the wrapper color, this outside, is a good indication typically of the strength, right? A darker wrap typically indicates that it's going to be quite strong, in terms of the amount of nicotine and just how hard it's going to hit you. Um, if you've been smoking like me for years, I can jump between like a 1 on the strength scale and like a maximum of 5, I can jump in between those no problem. But if you're just starting out, you're gonna kind of want to stick to like 1, 2, maybe 3 on the strength scale, and you can kind of sort of tell that just by if the wrap is light or dark. So you're gonna want something with a lighter outside, and then maybe something a little bit on the smaller side in terms of like length, and then like how big it is around. So that way, you know, you don't you don't get sick or anything. That's my recommendation. And then as you know, if you if you think, oh, you pick up something from a local shop and you go, oh, you smoke on it, you go, oh yeah, that was that was pretty good, I like that. Then go back to that smoke shop and you know try something new. Keep trying different things, and eventually what'll happen is your palate, like your actual tasting organs, I guess, in your mouth and in your sinuses and all that, will kind of they'll kind of adapt to where you'll be able to taste through the the tobacco to actually get some of those flavor notes that me and other guys who smoke will talk about, right? You'll be able to taste those woods, that earth, and some cigars kind of taste kind of chocolatey, some of them taste kind of like coffee, just naturally, and you'll be able to taste that through the tobacco, and then you'll go back and maybe if you had in the past, you'll go back and smoke a cigarette and you'll be like, this is terrible, this sucks, because of how processed cigarettes are, all the additives and all the bad shit in them that give you super cancer. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here, I'm not gonna lie and say, oh yeah, cigars are fine, they're perfectly fine. It's still a bad thing to do, but it's not as bad for you as cigarettes, especially with moderation, right? But yeah, I realize I was kind of excessively long-winded there, but yeah, that's kind of how you get in. And if you like it, you know, stick around. If you don't, you can say you tried it, right? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different cigars out there, that with different flavors and different strengths and different combinations of different leaves, different tobacco leaves and this and that. But sometimes you can just tell from the first one that this isn't for me. So, you know, but some people give it multiple tries before they go, maybe not. And you kind of just put as much into it as you want and then kind of go from there. Also, wait a minute. Is that Trip? Oh my god, did you actually find me? Good lord. Well, maybe not. I might be wrong. But just kind of reading the username, that might be Trip. So I've lost rhythm here. And that's another thing about cigars is, they don't stay lit. They will go out if you don't, like, relatively consistently kind of, puff or, take a draw. You know, at the risk of sounding like a little bit of a hippie, cigars are all natural. All right. What you see right here, other than this band, is essentially just all tobacco. There is some like vegetable paste stuff that they kind of use as glue, but it's vegetable it's vegetable paste. What is on the side of my nose? But it's all natural. There's none of the like chemicals and other nonsense that you find in cigarettes in cigars. So again, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh yeah, cigars are not actually bad for you. They are. They are. Any form of smoking is going to have some kind of detrimental effect. But if you compare, the health deficits of cigarettes to cigars, you will find, just kind of like looking into it, that yeah, cigars are less bad for you. You know, I mean, obviously it can get worse. If you're chuffing like 5 of these a day, you you might you're probably going a little bit too far. I mean, you got money, definitely, probably, but you're probably going a little bit too far with it. And then at that point, the you know yeah, I pray for you if you ever go into withdrawal, because going into withdrawal off of cigars sucks. Because a cigar of about this size, at least the original length, because I've burned it down a little bit here, a cigar of about this length is about a whole pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine. And I'll sit here and smoke this whole thing down, and I'll be good for days. But that's because I'm good for days because I moderate it. Yeah, I get to that 3 day hump and maybe I'll get a little bit cranky or whatever, but I'm not just gonna full on crash. You know, usually if I wait about a week, I really start to feel bad. So, I try to I try to keep I try to keep my smoking down to 2 3 times a week, and I'm getting better with that. You know, kind of just need to what I do to stop myself from smoking too much is I play games that require two hands, right? Because, and this is a personal preference on my part, I don't like to I don't like to hold it like this and do this, because I don't put the cigar far enough into my mouth to get a good draw without my hand for support. That's why on these streams I typically play like Yu-Gi-Oh, or just like put Azur Lane on or something, because I can play those games entirely with the mouse with just one hand. You know, there have been times where I played Mecha Break and smoked, but the matches in Mecha Break are so fast and so short that I can puff in between and keep it burning pretty consistently. But it's another thing where it's just like do it in moderation, so that way you don't kind of break your bank, but also so you can kind of keep that. I mean, because it's nicotine, it's an addiction, but that way you can kind of keep that under control. You know, don't make that way you're keeping things under control there, right? But yeah, there's my somewhat excessively long-winded cigar speech. And I know a whole bunch of I know a handful of different little like tricks and things when it comes to smoking. I know that you can if you accidentally, when you clip it, if if it starts to unravel a little bit, you can uh you could go online and buy cigar glue to repair any damage, or you can go to Walmart and get some unflavored chapstick and just use chapstick to repair the damage, and it's basically equivalent. um that's one little trick that I know. you know but yeah, see, because I've been smoking for, let's see, about 4 years now. Yeah, because it's October. Yeah, so about 4 years. And pretty consistently smoking. I mean, I've had points, right, where I was smoking every day, and then at different for different lengths of time, and I've kind of realized that and went, okay, hold on, I need to kind of rein it in, and then I'll kind of taper myself off, you know, because I don't want to go into withdrawal because it sucks. It feels bad. But I also enjoy doing this. I like how it just kind of relaxes me, and you know, I like the social aspect of it too. I like sitting down with Aiden or the boys, and we'll have a smoke and just converse. Shoot the shit. You know, I'm a little socially awkward, if anybody couldn't tell. And so having
this to kind of help smooth some of that over, you know, because yeah, you can go to cigar lounges, and if there are people there, you can kind of just strike up conversation with them, like, oh hey, what are you smoking, and start things off like that, and then I mean, converse with people in a nice atmosphere. I haven't been to the cigar bar in this town in a while, but then again, yeah, then again, I have my own stash, uh, so that's kind of disincentivized me a little bit. That and you know people are somewhat less sociable than they used to be. So, approaching a stranger in a cigar bar and going, "Hey, what's going on? What are you smoking?" is perhaps it's just my experience, but it seems less common. But you can do that. You can approach somebody and go, "Hey, hey, what are you smoking? I'm trying to, I'm looking for, for something good, you know, you know, yeah." Yeah, but that's the cigar speech. You know, Obviously I enjoy it, or else I guess I wouldn't have done it for 4 years. I would have quit, like I quit smoking cigarettes. But I guess with me, the whole smoking cigarettes thing that was kind of that was born of necessity somewhat, and I was also really really strict about it when I would on and off smoke. I'd smoke cigarettes for 3 months out of the year, and then I would just quit cold turkey, and it was it was unpleasant, but not overly unpleasant. So because you know, being a student of psychology, I I have a greater insight into addiction and how it works, and you know it require when you get deep into it, it requires the deeper you get into an addiction, the more hard willpower it takes to get out of it. The deeper you dig that hole, the harder it is to climb out. And so I try to keep myself I try to really exercise moderation, so that way the hole isn't too deep, as it were. And then if I ever want to take a break, say, oh, I'm not really in the mood to smoke. Yeah, there's gonna come a point, where I do that. If I take a month off, there's gonna be a point where it's like, oh God, I feel terrible, but it's not gonna be overly bad. You know, I'm pretty, if I'm pretty sure that if finances and my mood demanded it of me, I could probably go all the way down to once a month and not feel overly bad. And you know whatever it's just but that's because I exercise. That's because I exercise that moderation. And when it comes to things that I need to do, I do exercise I do kind of exercise my will on myself there and go, no, it's just take care of yourself, it's fine, just give it a few more days and you won't feel bad. you know because this isn't a hard drug. So I understand that those are much different, and that is much harder. uh you know so it's not the same, but it has enough similarities to where the pattern recognition kind of goes off, and you realize. Oh. Hmm. Hmm. We've gotten a lot of woodiness now that we've burned into the second third here. It's not and it's a woodiness that really sticks to the palate. Hmm. Yeah, it's a woodiness that really it sticks to my whole palate. Woo. It's not terrible. And since I've been doing this for so long, some of the flavors that I didn't particularly like starting out, I'm more amenable to. Uh, those cedars. Ooh. Cedar is a common flavor, so if you don't like the taste of cedar at various strengths, you might have some problems. You might have some troubles. Mm. Oh, that sticks to the palate even through the Mountain Dew. Ooh. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're this has got this particular stick has some strong flavor that lingers too. So that's good. That's a good thing. You know, it only becomes a bad thing when it's not a flavor that you don't particularly enjoy or that you just straight up dislike. Which is why I would hesitate to recommend Gurkha cigars to anybody beginning because Gurkha cigars have strong flavor, which is a good point for them. Uh, but when it's a flavor that you don't particularly enjoy, that becomes a detriment to them. Which yeah. Uh, Are we how good are we burning here? Are we not? I might have to take a draw and actually just watch the camera here. Hold on. There we go. No, we're burning good now. Okay. I realized that you see the fire starting to spread. So yeah, it's we got that wrap reignited by having a good draw there. That's another thing with cigars that you're gonna have to get used to is cigarettes are really easy to just light up and just like pull smoke from. Cigars have a varying degree of that because they can be really tightly packed with tobacco, but they can also be a little bit lighter packed. So you'll have different. You'll have to put more effort into drawing sometimes. And if you had asked me when I started smoking if I preferred having a tougher draw or a lighter one, I would say, oh yeah, definitely like less resistance is better. But now that I've been smoking for a number of years, I find that there's a certain amount of resistance that I prefer because I don't want no resistance because more often than not I'll accidentally like take too much. I'll swallow it. I'll swallow some smoke. It'll get down into my stomach. I'll cough. I'll feel bad. Um, but at the same time, if there's too much resistance and I gotta sit here and I gotta get red in the face, trying to get something off of it, that's also bad. Um, you know, but cigars have good craftsmanship, generally. Um, even on the cheaper end, there's a certain degree of craftsmanship to it. And if you take care of your collection, it will functionally stay good forever. The cigars will functionally stay good forever, if you take good care of that stuff. Um, which I take decent care of my collection because I wanna keep them good. I don't that's a lot of money I've invested that I am quite literally striking a match to set on fire. But you know, I want to get my money's worth, as it were. Out of the experience, out of you know sitting back in my chair here and just having a nice having something to kind of unwind with my thoughts and or in a social setting just unwind and socialize you know you know again, more added to the cigar speech. There's a lot there. If I organized it, it would probably be quite the speech. But there's a lot to say, and you know, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, we're about halfway done. We're getting there. We're about halfway done. I got things. As always, I have errands to run tomorrow, among other things. Oh, but I also need to make sure that I'm here just in case I get pulled into work because the inspectors are out again. The corporate inspectors are out again, lurking about. So I need to be ready. So my free time these next few days when I'm not scheduled to work are going to be kind of tinged with that. With do I I gotta be ready. So committing to something is going to have that caveat to where it's like, look, it needs to be something that I can potentially leave and at a moment's notice and go to work. So that'll be great. As long as I don't get too deep into anything, I won't be overly peeved about an interruption. At least until this passes, and then I can go back to just you know having you know having just good quality free time that is in relatively short supply because taking care of yourself on top of working 40 plus hours is definitely possible. However, your free time is going to suffer as a result. And so something gives somewhere. Usually for me at least, I prioritize work because I have bills. I am an adult. Uh, but usually that's somewhat. Sometimes I'll go, oh, I can short myself a little bit of sleep and squeeze out a little bit more free time. And sometimes I'm reasonable about that, and sometimes not so much. Going into work on 6 hours does not feel good, but I'll shake off that initial lethargy and be tempted to nap when I get off work, like I did today. That was a good nap. It was a good nap. Um, you know, but napping is not something I frequently do, just because uh, the temptation to just not get up is there, but then I don't want to I don't want to sleep away my free time. I realize I've messed my hair up. I don't want to sleep away my all of my free time because then I'm gonna be completely miserable. You know, so kind of striking a good balance is definitely an acquired skill and definitely one that I'm still working on. I think I just, like I say, somewhat frequently, I just need to be a little bit more strict with myself with things. You know, I gotta try and work a little bit harder to get ahead so that way, I can kind of, if I can ride that wave of getting ahead, then I can stay ahead. Um, but it's definitely not easy. It's definitely not easy. Also, I need to test this because no, we're good. Ugh, ugh. Honestly, though, it's 4:30, and I really have things to do. So I might actually. This is a good stopping point, actually. So you know, for those of you out there who are new to cigars, when you're done, as it were, whether it's you smoked all the way down or you want to leave it for later, what you do is you don't stamp it out in your ashtray or anything. You just kind of put it. Cigar ashtrays kind of have divots. I have a little cigar holder that I use since I'm not using a cigar ashtray. Not even using like a real ashtray. Using a decorative skull that I received as a gift. But you just kind of set it in the divot and you just kind of let it go out because it will go out naturally. It will go out normally. And then you know, for this, since it's halfway, once it's out, I can put it in back into my humidor and just kind of it's functionally the equivalent of finishing a meal halfway and then putting it in the fridge for later. Except in this case, the fridge is about room temperature and will has the right humidity to preserve the cigar to where it's still going to be good later. But that being said, I am going to end things off here. Much more positive stream, much less tired stream. I don't remember last stream that well, but definitely, definitely some, much better. I'll be able to remember what I said, and I talked about VTC, my big project and whatnot. So yeah, I'll see you all. I'm planning on streaming at another point this week. I don't know if that'll be the dev stream. I don't know if that'll, I might make some gaming in there. We'll see. We'll figure that out. And then, we'll kind of go from there. But I think there's going to be more than one stream this week. So until then, everybody, I'll see you.